You're listening to the Sixers Beat with your host, Derek Bodner, right here on LibertyBallers.com and LibertyBroadcast.co.
Welcome, everybody. This is Derek Bodner. I'm joined by Rich Hofmann on the latest Sixers Beat. Today, we will, just for context, we are recording this on Friday afternoon before the Sixers play the Mavs. I will probably not get a chance to release it until tomorrow morning, so just when you listen to it over the weekend, you know when it was recorded. Also, real quick, leave us a rating or review on iTunes if you can. We appreciate that. It helps get us out to a wider audience. Also, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and now TuneIn Radio. Also, check out the CLNS Radio app, which you can find ourselves, B-Ball Breakdown, Real Gym Radio, and Sam Vecini's Game Theory podcast. Real quick before we begin, also a word from our sponsor, Harry's Razors. You've heard me talk about it the past couple of episodes, so I will cut to the chase. I really do. It's been a good shaving experience. The cost of razor blades do drive me insane. You go to the store, you buy a razor and 4 blades, and all of a sudden you're out $25-$30. It's insanity. These are good blades, half the cost, and I do recommend them. You can actually nowadays find them at Target. Do not buy them at Target. If you can, go to harrys.com/SixersBeat, where you can get a free trial, and also where we will get credit for referring you there, so that will help us when our contract with them comes up. But with all that out of the way, how you doing, Rich?
I'm good, Derek. I just had a nice shave a couple hours ago from Harry's Razors, and I will say that that's a product that we're fully behind. It's a good thing that we're not endorsing a product that we don't like,
right?
Which we would still shamelessly do anyway.
Of course we would. Now that I'm on my own, not backed by a media outlet, it is you reevaluate certain things. And look, if MeUndies wants to advertise with us, we will take their money as well. But it would be a little bit more interesting of a read, that's for sure. But yeah, I tried Harry's Razors for the first time when we got the ad, and I've been pleasantly surprised. So do check it out. All right. On today's show, I figure we will get to, first of all, I know you have some strong opinions on that. So Sixers, Lakers, and their rebuilds. Joel Embiid's seemingly constant injury status, injury question mark, how they're going to proceed going forward. Obviously, Nerlens Noel makes his Philadelphia return. We'll talk about that. And then maybe a little bit of, NCAA tournament. Also, I want to get into what you would use for your starting front court. So we'll get to all that. But how you doing, Rich? Nice to have you on. You've been a little busy over the last couple of weeks with that pigskin team in town, but welcome back.
People care about that. It's good to be back. It's crazy.
It's been a down period for the Sixers too, if we're being honest. So no surprise that Philly voice is redirecting you in other areas.
No, not at all. So yeah, no, it's good to be back. It's good to see the. Obviously this will probably be released after the Sixers game against the Mavericks, but it's just good to see a live basketball game again tonight. So and we'll get a cup.
You had that, All-Star break, and then that huge drop in interest in the team, and then a road trip, and it has just felt like you said, there's been the team hasn't been around all that often frequently. It's been out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people who just don't follow it quite as religiously day to day as they used to. It'll be nice to be back in the building, get a little bit of excitement, get the hometown cheering on Nerlens Noel, who seems very eager to embrace that. So it'll be a good night.
Yeah, good move by Nerlens last night, giving out free cheesesteaks, it looked like too. Really playing up. He doesn't want to get booed, even though I don't think he will at all. I don't think there was anything.
After he went on his rant about not being an 8-minute per game player, and they came out and gave him a standing ovation, next game or a couple games after that, I think he's probably pretty safe. I think he's got most of the fans in his corner already. But before we get there, I know you had some strong opinions on the Lakers and their rebuild and how that's being covered, and comparing that with how the Sixers rebuild was covered. So, Rich, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm not usually a so-called hot take artist by any means, but this was a spicy one for me. And I do believe it though. Like it's not something that I completely, I'm completely making up. It's a thought I had in my head, and I really tried to hammer that point home with a post the other day. So I guess a couple of days ago, I was watching Pardon the Interruption. And before I get into ripping Michael Wilbon, I'd like to say, like, that's a Hall of Fame show, Pantheon show. The fact that that's been on for this long and is still this good is, you know what I mean? It's amazing. So, it's great. But there was a question posed to him. I don't know what exactly the segment was. But he had to deal with a question that had to do with how should Adam Silver feel about the Lakers shamelessly tanking down the stretch. And Kornheiser took it first, and he said something along the lines of he should be embarrassed. And then Wilbon said Adam Silver should be thanking God that the Lakers are tanking. They need to get a top player in the draft, which in a vacuum is absolutely right. Unfortunately, I also listened to Michael Wilbon talk about the Sixers the last few years. And let's just say it didn't exactly jibe with his previous analysis. So then a couple hours later, so that bothered me. And then a couple hours later, I saw Stephen A. Smith on ESPN.com because Stephen A. Smith, the former Sixers beat writer for the Inquirer and columnist back in the Iverson days, is now somehow the biggest employee at ESPN. They play him up like nobody else. And whatever his takes are, they will put them front and center on ESPN.com. And that's what they did. And his latest take was, not only should the Lakers be tanking, I think he said, this is a process you should trust. And I believe he said something along the lines of, you can lose for a couple months, not 3 years. And I understand that Stephen A. isn't made to be taken completely seriously. I think I called him a performance artist in the post, which is, sometimes I do think we get a little too over the top about treating him as a journalist. If you looked at him as if he was an actor or something like that, I think you'd say, wow, this guy's actually pretty talented. But for some reason, this just...
It takes a lot of skill and effort to be that full of shit. I could never do that. I mean that full seriously. It takes a lot to be able to do what he does with a straight face and that kind of passion, whether it's real or manufactured. It for sure a skill, not one I necessarily want to perfect, but for sure a skill.
Every day, and it's not easy to do what he does. To be able to pretend or if you actually care about just every subject possible, it's impressive. But like Stephen A. Smith, like, have you freaking watched the Los Angeles Lakers the last 3 years? Like, are you freaking kidding me? They can lose for 3 months. They've been a disaster over the past 3 years. I looked it up. They have, at the moment, they have 14 more wins since the process started in the Sixers.
Over a 4-year span. We're talking about 3 wins a year.
3 wins a year. And last year, this blew my mind. I forgot about this. Last year, when the Sixers almost set the record for the most losses in NBA history, they had 10 wins. They barely avoided that distinction. The Lakers had a worse net rating than them.
Right.
They were a worse team. They just got lucky at the end of games. So they've been a disaster for just as long. And like as far as winning 14 more games, I would bet that number, even though the Sixers don't figure to win a ton more games this year, I would imagine that number decreases over the next month. The Lakers are a disaster. They couldn't guard me and you right now.
Yeah.
And like, there's just so many factors here that were just bubbling up. Like, do you want to go back? Like, part of it is the hypocrisy of Jeannie Buss saying tanking is unforgivable, and Luke Walton saying the basketball gods, are bad to people.
I wish. Tank. Don't you just wish that they had another game in Philly? I would love to ask him about that right now.
I know, and I like Luke Walton too.
Oh, quite a bit, absolutely.
I think he can be a good coach, but
this is. Sorry to cut you off. This is part of the problem. This is why you don't get up on your high horse unless you truly mean it. This is not 1997 anymore. We remember stuff. Yep. I feel like that guy in Jurassic Park. They remember. We remember stuff. Things are cataloged. They're easily searchable. It's going to come back in your face. So whether that's Luke Walton saying, you can never do it. It hurts your development. Whatever it is he actually said. I forget. I'm probably confusing Jeannie Buss's quote and Luke Walton's quote. But for him to say that and now for them to do this, for Jeannie to say this and now to do this, you can even go back to a lot of the comments that Brian Colangelo has made in terms of culture and development and how he would go about it when he himself has admitted tanking in a season. When you look, by the way, can we kill that narrative about not being able to develop players the way the Sixers were operating? When you have TJ McConnell playing the way he is, when you have, Robert Covington developing the way that he did, Rashawn Holmes turning into a real life NBA backup center, maybe more, even Dario Saric, who a lot of people deserve credit for Saric's development, but I think Sam Hinkie and his staff get at least some of the credit because they said right from the jump, we don't have the roster spots or the playing time to develop all these guys at once. We're going to take guys not only and be willing to send them overseas, but seek out opportunities to send them overseas. So for them to draft him in 2014 and him to develop those 2 years and now play like he has, I think you have to give them credit for that too. So you have those 4 guys who I've singled out look like very real pieces of the team's future. At least backup players, some of them starters, some of them, a lot of people are looking at Saric as potentially being more than that. They developed guys. They found guys. Guys grew under their system. Like I think that's one of the narratives that needs to go away. But going back to the beginning point, when you're a guy like Colangelo, we can go back and look at your tanking comments in the past. We can go look at some of what happened with some of your players with hey dude type guys, where maybe your culture's not always perfect. And in this case, we can go to Luke Walton and Jeannie Buss and say, look, you're a freaking hypocrite. And somebody should really call them on the carpet. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I mean, Google search algorithms, they're pretty good. There's a reason that company
they make money. Yeah.
It's a reason that company's going to own the world in a few years. They and Derek, I had a lot of Sixers fans who were happy with that piece, which is cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people said, "Oh, and the Lakers stink and it's they have no superstars," which in general, I kind of agree with, but my point wasn't about that. My point was about the coverage of how they're rebuilding, because what they are doing is pretty much the same thing as it's a little different. I don't want to say that the Lakers are the exact same, because Sam Hinkie was much more methodical, much more organized, and this was planned out. But the lesson we're learning here from the NBA is, go ahead, be incompetent. Be as incompetent as you want. And if the end product is pretty much the exact same thing as being well-run and incompetent, that's fine. But don't be well-run and incompetent. Like, don't plan, not incompetent. Don't be well-run. Sorry, I'm messing this up now. Don't be well-run and bad at the same time. Because we're afraid of other teams doing that. Because I just think, like, be consistent, right? Like, if you're Tony Kornheiser and you think tanking is a scourge on the NBA or whatever, that's fine. At least he was consistent. I just want the Lakers called out in the same manner that the Sixers were, because unfortunately, I think a major part of the reason Sam Hinkie lost his job was the perception of the Sixers.
Yep.
So, yeah, it just sort of bothered me. I mean, there's so many other things that get me mad. Remember all the people who said that the Sixers didn't have any veterans who were showing the way for young guys? Like, as far as the Lakers are concerned, what were they missing? Nick Young? Is he the locker room president
right.
that the team was missing?
Meanwhile, the guys that they did invest heavily in, the Luol Dengs, the Timofey Mozgovs, the $16 million a year players, they sent them home.
Oh, it's just a disaster. Just be incompetent. Just try and wing it and be terrible, and the NBA will not be on your back. But man, have a long-term plan and say we're going to sit out a couple years as far as signing free agents for the same reason. Like, oh my God, Mozgov and Deng are the exact reason Sam Hinkie didn't play in free agency. The only way to get guys was going to be to overpay them. And now the Lakers are in a bad spot because of that. It's just, I mean, and then there's Kobe Bryant shooting jumper after jumper and bricking every one of them while D'Angelo Russell and Jordan Clarkson are trying to develop. Like, the Lakers have been such a shit show over the past couple of years, and I think it's absolutely absurd that they're not being called out. Like, This is their fourth year of being really bad. If they had 27 wins that first year, so fine. This is their third straight year of being super, super bad. And they're tanking more shamelessly than ever. It's just,
Oh, by the way, you can look at Orlando, who's now in their, fifth year, right, of being bad. And everybody praised their progress. And here they are, same record essentially as the Sixers. No clear path to a superstar. And the overarching theme behind this is rebuilding in the NBA is really fucking hard. And it takes a long time. And the fact that Orlando made some short-term gains, like we always said, that had no guarantee of being sustainable progress. And the fact that the Sixers, kind of took maybe a little longer than you wanted. It's, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of hypocrisy. It's frustrating. It's mostly in the rearview mirror, but it's been brought to the forefront because of the Lakers' shamelessness and their hypocrisy.
And I had people saying, "Oh, you're mad that the Sixers aren't going to get the pick this year." I had Lakers fans saying that. No, first off, they have a 44% chance of getting the pick. Like that's right. That's just straight up math right there.
It really does. There's like a mind block when you see better than top 3 picks. Oh, they're not getting the pick. Fourth. Oh, I'm safe. I feel confident. It's a 9% difference between 3 and 4. Like there's not much change at all. But it really is amazing when people will see, oh, they're finishing with the second worst record. You're not getting the pick.
No, it's 44%. Like you could just look it up. That's the odds. So yeah, and then the other thing too about this, as far as like Lakers fans being mad at me, I don't blame the Lakers for what they're doing right now. Right. In fact, I actually applaud what they're doing. They should be tanking. After those terrible trades they made 5 years ago for Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, I mean, there has never been a team that has needed to tank more than the 2016-17 Los Angeles Lakers. So go ahead and tank. But let's be consistent in calling them out and maybe, if you're going to praise the Lakers for tanking now, maybe rethink your Sixers takes from the past 3 years. How about that? And that was basically the gist of the article. And by the way, Lakers fans, just to let you guys know, I don't think you guys are going to be that good next year. So, even if you get the pick this year, I mean, I'm not sure Lonzo Ball is really going to help your status because you guys are a disaster right now. Yes, terrible. You're in a bad spot.
The really great thing about the Lakers, and we'll move on. We don't want to make the whole podcast about the Lakers, although it's kind of fun. They all suffer the same weaknesses. Like the fact that you drafted so many guys and you have so many core pieces on the perimeter who just can't stop penetration. It really is. It's impressive what they've built. It's impressive, and probably the wrong way, but it's impressive. And then you combine that with no real shot blocking presence in the paint, and another guy in Randall with that weakness. I don't know how you easily navigate that without kind of trading some of your recently drafted, highly touted players for less than maybe market value. It'll be interesting. I mean, I still like Brandon Ingram. I know he has had a really bad rookie season. I know that he is also really young and has a lot of potential. I still like what he could become, but there's no sure thing in that group. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you what you thought about Ingram because I was pretty high on him.
Yeah,
coming into the draft last year, and he's been really bad this year. I don't want to don't want to mince words there, but to be fair, he is still super, super young.
Yeah, so he's super young and he's super. I mean, you can just tell that he needs about 100 cheeseburgers before he can really compete in this league.
Yeah, he needs to go to In-N-Out Burger. That's really what they got out there.
What's he doing out there? He's wasting his development time. All right, let's move on to some of the Sixers stars or hopeful stars. Stars if they're ever healthy. Stars when they're on the court.
That there's no certain thing in that group, perhaps either, even if the odds might be a little bit better.
At least we've seen them play, one of them play at a star level. And going back to him now, Joel Embiid still hasn't had surgery. It's been about a little over 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks, since they announced he was out for the season. Out in LA the last couple of days, getting more opinions from more doctors about a surgery that feels inevitable, and it seems like the only people who haven't come to that conclusion are Brian Colangelo and maybe Joel Embiid himself. What do you think the holdup is?
It was pretty strange when we got that update yesterday. He's out in California with David Martin. He hung back, after the road trip, and then I believe they went to San Diego, and there's like an orthopedist convention in San Diego or something like that. Are they just going up to random people and saying, "Hey, what do you think?"
Here's a scan. What would you do?
Yeah, are those great doctors from Qatar? Are they showing up at like a booth in San Diego, like a makeshift booth, and Joel sticking his putting his knee up on the on the table there? I don't know. This has been the pattern with Joel Embiid. Remember, for his second surgery, that holdup was like 2 months, and I don't know. Again, not a doctor, but it does feel like this surgery is inevitable. And if that's the case, like let's get on with it.
Right, because as you saw with Jahlil Okafor, it's not always, you might say 4 to 6 weeks, you might say 2 to 3 months. It's no guarantee. And it would be great to, if he gets it now, that's 2 to 3 weeks you could have saved. Like you could have, it's more cushion for the start of training camp, for the start of this regular season. It's, I think you brought up how he proceeded last summer, and I think that's a good point, because this is one of my theories, and it's just a theory. It's not from talking to anybody. Nobody's told me this, indicated this whatsoever. A little bit based off of how, my interactions with Joel and kind of the way he approaches things. But I almost wonder, he hesitated so long last summer for the surgery. I almost wonder if there was they met with 3 doctors. One of them said, yeah, get the surgery, absolutely. Another one of them said, yeah, you should probably get the surgery. And then another one said, well, you might not actually need the surgery. And for a guy who's been under the knife twice now in the last 2 years, who's missed so much time, who's had complications, surgeries not fix a problem, he might just not want to get another surgery. And if he's got somebody in his ear saying, look, you probably should get the surgery, but maybe not, or if there's any kind of uncertainty or a lack of consensus, he might be like, look, I want to get more opinions. I want to see if I can avoid doing this again. So he's going out to LA, meeting with more doctors, getting more opinions, getting somebody to tell him definitively one way or the other, this is the route you should go, because he's had such a bad experience in terms of surgeries the last couple of years. And again, I have no real indication this is the case. This is purely hypothetical, but it's the only thing to me that makes sense, outside of just not trusting the Sixers medical team, which, look, I get that completely, trust me. But outside of that, this is the only real explanation I can come up with for why they would be handling it the way they are.
Yeah, and it would be understandable in that case, because like we said, he's he could play basketball, it looks like, at a pretty high level. It's just the next day, it's right. If it were a one game thing, like if this were the Super Bowl, he'd probably play. So it's tough to know exactly what he's thinking. You kind of put that into the same camp as the Ben Simmons shoe incentive camp. I don't exactly know, but it's funny. It felt like he rushed that initial surgery back in 2014. Like, he did that before a team even got their hands on him, essentially, and that might have actually screwed him up in the long. That might have cost him a year, as it turned out. But yeah, it's tricky, and I think it's a good point for you to bring up. Like, he's a human being, and he understands. He's a smart guy, and he understands what's going on. So for him to be a little wary about going under the knife again, it would make sense.
Yeah, it's just, considering every time we get an update about this injury, it gets worse and worse and worse. Any kind of delay just feels like, oh great, what's the next shoe that can drop? What other thing can be wrong with Joel Embiid's lower body that we can hear about now? So I think for everybody's sake, just get the surgery. We know he's going to need it. Get him back to recovery. Get it back so in a month we can see him, playing basketball at draft workouts, and we can all get like a little sense of optimism back, because I think right now there's just a little bit of a sense of impending doom.
Oh, every update is like that. Like, so much so that people, even for irrational things, are getting, very upset about. Like when Brett Brown didn't want to talk about Ben Simmons or Embiid playing in the summer league. And newsflash,
they're not playing in the summer league.
If he could run a marathon, he wouldn't be playing in the summer league. Right. There's no reason for him to play in the summer league. That is kind of, That's one of the funny things of the Sixers over the past couple of years. People have gotten so excited for Summer League because, like, for legitimate reasons. It's been their Super Bowl.
That's the only time we see these guys play.
Yeah. And for a while, it was the only time these guys could actually compete with who they were playing against. I understand. Summer League's not basketball, guys. Like it's for a rookie who just got drafted. If you're Joel Embiid, who played at an all-star level in the NBA, there is 0.0% reason to play. Ben Simmons, on the other hand, it just doesn't really matter. We saw him dominate last year. So, like, what do you want, a 20-minute highlight tape as opposed to a 10-minute highlight tape? Is that the goal here? I don't, So.
I mean, for him, it would make sense to me just to get him a little bit of reps in before camp started. I could see having some interest in him playing if his foot is good to go. But yeah, it doesn't really matter, and it just seems like this is a team that, coming off of an injury, they're probably just going to let him ride out the last couple months. So I think set your expectations accordingly.
Yeah, get ready to watch Markelle Fultz and Malik Monk play for the Summer League team. So
exactly. We'll get back to the podcast in a bit, but with the NCAA tournament going on right now, possibly even as you're listening to this podcast, I want to take a moment to tell you about MyBookie, a quick way to score some money betting on the NCAA tournament. They even have live in-game betting so you can place a bet after tip-off. Join now and MyBookie will match your first deposit with a 50% bonus. That's right, if you join with $100, you'll get an extra $50 to play with. Use promo code SIXERS to activate the offer. Visit MyBookie today or call 1-844-900-BETS. That's 1-844-900-BETS. Play, win, get paid. Now's the time. Head over to mybookie.ag to place your bets today. Okay, next up, probably tonight's game, tonight as in Friday night, against Nerlens Noel and the Dallas Mavericks. It will be nice to see him back in the building tonight.
Yeah, and it's a must-lose if the Sixers want to get that first-round pick eventually.
Oh, yeah. Get out of here, Rich. What do they have? They have probably about 15 games left. How many out are they from the 19th spot? Come up with something to talk about. I'll look that up real quick.
Yeah, it will be good to see Nerlens play, though. It seems like he's doing all the right things.
7.5 games out of the 19th spot with 15 left.
Hey, the Phillies did it in 2007. So, yeah, it'll be good to see him back. He's playing well. It seems like he's in a good spot. But, you talk to all of the teammates, all of his teammates yesterday. They're going to be happy to see him. There was not one bad word said about Nerlens, from Brett Brown to Dario Saric to who else did we talk to yesterday? I think Covington for a little while. Yeah, it's just everybody, and Jaleel, everybody's happy to see him, and obviously they're going to try and beat him tonight. But yeah, it'll be good to see him back in Philly, and obviously I think I read today that he hung out with Rashawn Holmes at his house last night in Philly. Obviously, right. You can't sell it that fast, so he still has a place here. And he was at Chickies and Pete's last night giving out cheesesteaks to fans. That's cool. What do you think the Sixers will do? Do you think there will be like a video tribute for him?
I don't know. That's a good question. Because there was so much animosity at various points over the last couple of months, I wonder if they'll try to ignore it as much as they can. I don't know. That's a really good question. Because when he checks into the game, I think he came off the bench the last game. I don't know if that was just because of him coming back from the knee injury or whatnot. But I think he's been in and out of the starting lineup since going to Dallas. But when he checks in, he's got to get a strong ovation. Like, I don't know what kind of a crowd to expect for a team that is out of it like the Sixers are in mid-April. I mean, I guess I should know what kind of crowd to expect. It's crowds we've had for the last 4 years.
Dave, you know what? I'm not so sure about that, by the way. Maybe I'm wrong, but a couple weeks ago at a game, I was stunned at how big the crowd was. Now, maybe that was because the Knicks were there, but
oh, yeah.
We'll see tonight.
Here's what I'll say. Up through, this will be my first game back since the end of January. And up through then, the crowds were really good. It's just been, a lot of, every fork in the road has gone the wrong way since then. So
the Houston game was one of the best crowds I've seen. It was probably the best crowd I've seen ever here. That one, and probably Oklahoma City earlier this year. Just so, and obviously this is going to go up after the game is over, but if, I'll be judging all of you. Give the guy a round of applause. The guy had to deal with so much losing for a couple of years, and obviously he didn't always make it completely easy on the team, but he was by and large a very good soldier. So, show him some appreciation.
As long as you gave him playing time and a point guard who would pass him low ball, he was good to go. I had a fourth thing on the list. What was the fourth thing on the list?
Starting lineup next year?
Oh, yeah. So Dario has obviously been incredible for the last month and a half. Really absurd. I brought it up on Twitter. You and I remember during a podcast, probably around, right after the end of last season, before the lottery happened, but where we said because of skill sets, Dario would probably be the best player to start next to Embiid. And this was when you had, Jahlil Okafor, number 3 pick in the draft, only not 10 months removed from that. Nerlens Noel, number 6 pick in the draft, still on his rookie contract. And we were saying that Dario, drafted 12th overall, probably would be the best complement to Embiid and the best front court pairing to start. So I think we had not super high expectations, but we were excited to see Dario play. And I don't think either of us saw this stretch of basketball coming from him at all. Certainly not as a rookie, and not when most rookies would be hitting the rookie wall, and especially a rookie who played so deep into August for his national team, where you would think he would be really hitting the rookie wall. He's finishing so much better inside the arc than I thought he would. That was a real struggle for him to start the season. His jump shot over the last couple days has come around. But more than anything, his passing has looked like Dario from his Croatia days. And I think that was one of our consistent complaints about Efes, was the role they had him in was not making the most of that passing ability. So to see that come back out, it's been great to watch. And I don't want to diminish anything from what Dario took it all. But I kind of said, look, I'm not ready to say he's the starter alongside Ben Simmons. I think there are fit concerns. I think there's a case to be made for Covington, because his shooting opens up the court, because his defensive versatility with Covington, ability to force turnovers with Simmons, not Covington, but Covington and Simmons' ability to force turnovers, switch defensive assignments, and really pressure the ball could be really fun to watch, especially with a guy like Embiid behind him. And because I think having Dario running that second unit and kind of in that role that he's accustomed to in terms of, if not initiating the offense, initiating a good chunk of the offense, I think could be a better utilization of his skill sets. And I got a little bit of it was pretty evenly split. Some people agreed, some people were unsure, and then some people were very much against it. So I guess I kind of wanted to get your take on it. Right now, knowing what you know today, and not adding anybody in the draft, which sounds stupid, because obviously they're going to add somebody in the draft, what would your starting front court be?
Oh, I'm in 100% agreement with you. I would start Simmons and Embiid together.
But then at the 3,
Covington would play. Yeah, I'd play Dario I'd bring Dario off the bench. It reminds me sort of at this time last year. Is Embiid going to start next year, or would we bring him off the bench? And it's like, all right, well, now we know like he's the clear starter, and when he's healthy, he's got to play there. And I would basically take the same approach with Simmons. I mean, he's got that elite talent, and I think that those guys could be a lot of fun. Dario, he's played so well recently, and
over his last 16 games, here's the numbers: 20.3 points, 8 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 48% from the field, 32.6 from 3. That's come up recently. It was really interesting because I wrote a piece right before this, or right at the beginning of this hot stretch, calling his jump shot his swing skill. You've called it that before, I think, in the past. So he had this big run without that, and it was you hit some, you miss some. But yeah, that's come around in the last couple games as well. So there are the numbers. I'm sorry, go ahead talking about his.
No, that's super encouraging though, that he was able to be pretty effective. Well, I mean, bricking just 3 after 3. It's really good. Jason Concepcion of the Ringer Network on Twitter.
Right. I know the tweet.
He had a great tweet, and obviously he has a bunch. But Saric is not quick, doesn't really have hops, has a slow release, is good, and it's it's amazing. But it's funny. I asked Brett Brown about it yesterday. I said, "Are you encouraged?" Because obviously Dario isn't probably going to have as big of a role next year, but to see him sort of thrive when the team is so shorthanded, are you encouraged by that? And he basically pushed back and he said, "Hey, I mean, don't tell him that he's not going to have as big of a role."
Right.
But hey, look, if Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are healthy, like there's only one basketball. They,
Right.
but yeah, it's been great. I would bring him off the bench because I would start running the offense through him. The beauty of Dario Saric too, and I'm so confident about this because I saw him yesterday just work on his jumper. He was the last guy in the gym by a mile, and not to say, that's one time. I don't want to pretend like that's a complete, like a perfect picture of his work ethic. But this guy,
people can overrate because we see the last 10 minutes of a workout, right? We see the last 10 minutes of a practice. You don't know what a guy was doing last night. You don't know what a guy was doing before practice. Like, it's if you're a player and a young player and you want to get a really good reputation, be the last guy in the gym at practice. Sports writers will talk about it constantly. But you're right. I 100% believe that that's the way he's wired too.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I would be out there just like, hey, you guys watching me take these jumpers? Yeah. It was funny. Yesterday, all the guys, they looked like they went in right after practice because they wanted to watch the NCAA tournament, which I think a couple of them had their teams even playing there. By the way, if I was an NBA basketball player, I would have been in that camp as well. But as far as Dario is concerned, I'm really confident he's going to work his ass off this summer in Camden on his jumper. And I'm like, structurally, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, sometimes it's a little flat, obviously, and there are some tweaks.
Which happens when you move farther back. Like that's a common adjustment.
Absolutely, yeah. And he has to deal with a further 3-point line. I'm confident that he's going to put in the work this summer, and I'm confident that he's going to at least be an average 3-point shooter by the time it's all said and done. And that's really exciting because he's playing really, really well right now. But back to your original point, yes, I would bring him off the bench.
Right. And I'm not even look, if you want to experiment with that starting lineup, I'm fine with it. I even said this in the article I wrote, which was behind the paywall since that's my thing nowadays. But I even said this, like, look, I'm not saying I'm right and this is how it's going to be and I'm 100% confident. This is just my gut feeling. I'm perfectly fine if you start that, Simmons, Saric, Embiid lineup, see how it works. I'm fine if you bring Saric off the bench and then experiment with that lineup at times throughout the games when the matchup works well in your favor. Right now, I look at it, first of all, I think you maximize Saric by putting him off the bench and giving him a bigger creation role. But I also look at it like you have these two really special pieces in Simmons and Embiid. How can you get the most out of them? And by the way, it's not only how can you get the most out of them on the offensive side of the court. Well, that's the easiest way to look at it, and I think the way that we naturally gravitate towards. But you have this really elite shot blocker, and this guy in Simmons who can switch defensively and force turnovers. How can we maximize those abilities too? And I think a guy like Covington who can pressure, who can switch himself, who can force turnovers and get out on the break, I think that helps both those guys out on the defense side of the court. But more specifically, shooting ball. I mean, Covington, well, I don't want to call him a more consistent shooter because he goes through these, third of the season stretches where he just can't hit a thing. But in theory, when he's hitting, he does more to space the floor than Dario does. And he requires the ball less. And he's just a little easier, I think, to fit in with Simmons and Embiid. Whereas, like I said, you let Dario run the second unit, or at least be the secondary initiator on the second unit. Put him in a lot of pick and rolls with Rashawn, who can do that role to the basket, but doesn't post up and create nearly as much as Embiid does. I just think that's a better utilization of all of their skills. And it just seems like there's a little bit of there's still that mental block of, these are the starters, they're my 5 players, they're the most important. You can't take a talent like Dario and ask him to come off the bench. And I don't think it's, flat out, this has to be stated, it really depends on the people, the personalities you have on your roster. If Dario's the type who says, no, look, I'm a starter, start me or trade me, and I don't think he'd do that year 2, but he might do that year 4, year 5, year 6. If he's that type of personality, then you have to take that in consideration. But if you can say, Dario, we're going to give you 25 to 30 minutes a game off the bench. We're going to give you a bigger role because you're not going to be playing with Simmons, who's going to be creating so much. And we're going to try to mix and match you with Simmons on the court in matchups that make sense. If you're putting him in a spot where he's better to succeed, then why is that? I don't see that being an issue. To me, it's all about matchups, how skill sets fit together, and also how personalities then react to those decisions. And that's the only part I have a real question about whether or not I would try it.
Oh, you're absolutely right about this mental block of the starters are the 5 most important guys on the team. And unfortunately, some NBA players have that block too.
Oh, sure. It's not just a fan thing, for sure.
Yeah, but I would tell him, look, like, we're going to bring you off the bench. You're going to play a lot with Embiid. You're going to play a little with Simmons, too. And that could be a lot of fun. Obviously, I don't think we've talked about it in a while. I mean, their passing could just be amazing on the floor together. Dario is, I think the other cool thing about it, to take Network's tweet a little further, I've never seen a slow guy more dangerous on the fast break before in my life. Like, not a good athlete by any means, but like whenever he has the ball on the fast break, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this might not look all that pretty, but I think something good's going to happen. And then sometimes it does look pretty. He'll throw a great no-look pass or something like that. But yeah, I would bring him off the bench. And I guess the real question is, Brett Brown says this all the time, is he closing games?
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, look, I mean, we're talking about the starting lineup, but those same problems could exist maybe with a lack of spacing or maybe Covington. I mean,
it's hard to take Covington's defense off the court. It's really difficult.
Brett's not gonna as long as he's on the team. So, and by the way, Zach Lowe gave him a shout out today in his 10 things. I think he said about Covington, he said he'd be the type of guy who could steal your wallet on the subway.
Right.
Which is high praise. They, and it would be interesting too, just as far as Covington's concerned. This is sort of a secondary issue, but I'd love to see him play the 4 a little bit. And I'm not sure the Sixers have the personnel that are going to allow that, but I think he has the ability to guard 4s. And if it's after January and he's making 3s, he could be a pretty dangerous player in that spot.
Maybe we need to send Covington to a national team. Have him play year round so he doesn't have November and December where he can't shoot anymore.
Or we just have to tinker with his iPhone and say that at least make it seem like it's January when the season starts. I don't know.
Can we just get a little colder, make him wear a coat to the game, get him shooting well right from the jump, because the last 2 years he has struggled out of the gate, and then brought his averages back up to the career norm after the break. So it is
Christmas has moved to late October for him.
But it is nice to see a guy like Zach, give Covington the credit that he has deserved. It's nice to see the national attention catch up to him. Locally, I don't know, in the a lot of the media circles, I know Keith and maybe Bob have written recently about his defense, but I still feel like it might be underappreciated to some. But it is for guys who defended Covington and said he was going to break out of his shooting slump, it is really nice to see him now have this kind of success, look like a real long-term fixture on a team, have fans really asking and talking about how he deserves that contract extension. And it is, his defense really has progressed to the point where you can't take him out in a close game. It's tough to do. He would be, people for years like to, and especially a lot of traditional media, especially a lot of, casual fans. Oh, he's not a real NBA player. He's just a Sixers player. Oh no, that defense plays on a lot of teams in the league. A lot of good teams too. Yeah.
Okay. Last thing. So we did our front court starting rotation. Just, you can take the most wild guess possible. What do you think about the other 2 guys?
I have no freaking idea. So there's 18 different ways this can go, and most of it's predicated on the draft, right?
Yeah.
If they get that point guard, or that quote unquote point guard, the guy who's going to be defending point guards in the draft, then a lot of the guys you would look at in free agency you don't go after, or at least I don't think Brian will go after. You don't sign a Kyle Lowry if you draft Alonzo Ball. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense. I'm going to say Lonzo Ball.
Yes.
And then I'm going to say Jared Bayless.
Yes. Well, no, I'm not as happy about that, but they.
I've come around on Alonzo Ball, by the way. I've come around. He's in my top 3. I know I was a little skeptical because, like I said, those guys who just break molds, they're so much more difficult to scout. Like, there's such a high variance where if he doesn't do X amount of things at an elite level, his deficiencies can catch up. There are 3 elite skills that I'm convinced of in this draft, or at least at the top of this draft. There's Markelle Fultz's ability to shoot off the dribble.
Off the dribble, yeah.
And really all-around offensive game, but especially off the dribble, that's an elite skill. Malik Monk's shooting is an elite skill. And Lonzo Ball's passing is an elite skill. Those are the things that I know are elite skills. And I would be very surprised if all 3 of those didn't translate to some degree.
Yeah, Lonzo has a few pretty pronounced weaknesses. The main one being his dad. They
He's fit right in. We should bring back KJ.
He's an exciting player, though. I just like, I know that shot screwed up. It looks weird, but
it goes in.
It goes in from 30 feet.
Look, if you find Twine, I don't care how you get it there. I mean, I do, because there's repeatability and there's shooting off the dribble and shooting different spots, all that stuff. I get that. But more or less, if you can shoot and hit and make buckets off the catch, that's what I'm looking for in my point guard right now. Can you imagine how much fun they would be with Simmons, Saric, Ball, and Embiid? Like, forget about winning. I mean, obviously that's a goal, and I'm 100%, like, that's always been my focus. That team would be, I mean, we said that coming into this season too, and then Simmons was out for the year, and Embiid was out for over half the year, and, shit happens. But that team would be a lot of fun, assuming nobody's foot falls off between now and then.
The entertainment level will be high. By the way, Ben Simmons on Snapchat was making fun of LeVar Ball for did he
for
say
$1 billion?
Did he say $1 billion?
Yeah.
I'm sure they patch that up though. And it's leaving the floor at Oracle the other night. It's first off, it's really interesting to me to see, like, a couple of Golden State writers. I think Tim Kawakami is one of them, the columnist. He said that he had never seen the Warriors in a couple of years, like, react so positively to a team they had just beat, like reaching out for Brett and Saric and people like that. So the Sixers are gaining some respect, obviously, around the league for how they play hard. They but just walking off the court, my main thought was like, wow. I was like, Saric could be, the fifth wheel next year.
Right.
Covington could be the sixth wheel. That's pretty good, man.
Well, so we talked about bringing two quick points, and I'll let you go, mostly because I have to start getting ready for tonight's game. But 2 quick points. That we both agreed Dario off the bench. You've got Dario off the bench, TJ presumably off the bench next year, Rashawn off the bench next year. Possibly Gerald Henderson, depending on if he's brought back.
Luwawu, maybe.
Jared Bayless, if he's, depending on the role. Luwawu. I mean, you've got some real James Anderson, who is at least an NBA player.
Justin.
You've got some real bench depth.
Justin, not James. James is the ghost of Christmas past.
Yeah. Too many years talking about the James Andersons of the world. But yeah, you've got some real pieces off the bench. And like you said, if Dario's your 4th or 5th wheel and Covington's your 6th, you've done something right. Now you just got to get the pieces that fit and stay healthy. Oh, also, the what I was going to say before that, the big winner of this year has to be Brett Brown. Like, it has to be. Like, he has garnered so much goodwill across the league and so much respect for what he's gone through and also how he's getting them to play right now. Is there any chance Brian Colangelo moves on this year?
I think it would be a massive. I think, one, it would be a mistake tactically and as far as functionally, just as the team is concerned. From a public relations standpoint, it would be such a nightmare. It would be so poorly received on about 10,000 different fronts. So, yeah. Good luck.
That's the thing, though. If they go out and Embiid plays a full year, or at least an Embiid full season, 65, 70 games, Simmons comes back, they get a high draft pick. A lot of these young guys, Saric, Holmes, continue to take steps. They do something in free agency. This team could win 35, 40 games next year. So if you have a coach who took a team from 10 wins to 28 wins to 40 wins, you can't fire that guy to bring in your own guy. Like, it would have been bad PR for Colangelo to fire Brett last year. It would be really bad PR for him to fire him now. And it might be impossible for him to fire him after next season. This is kind of a really weird spot where a GM was brought into a 10-win team and never really had the chance to bring, not that had the chance, like he missed out on something and he should have, but like where it would have been feasible for him to bring in his own guy. It's kind of amazing the goodwill Brett has garnered with the record he has, but good for him. He deserves it.
Definitely. And I mean, God, the last, that road trip, I've never seen a more impressive 1-3 road trip in my life. Like they had no business being competitive in a couple of those games, and they were. So, yeah. I mean, he keeps proving me wrong. I keep writing columns that the Sixers are about to get their ass kicked pretty consistently, and both times it really hasn't happened. So,
all right. Well, it sounds good. Thank you, Rich, for hopping on. We will talk to you soon.
See you, man.
You've been listening to the Sixers Beat right here on LibertyBallers.com and LibertyBroadcast.co.
Contacted, I attract clientele. My mic check is life or death, breathing